There are a few terrible fears Gravship occupants have, and no matter your xenotype, you are bound by these worries that lurk at the back of your mind. The first is power, for without power, the oxygen supply will cut off and the heaters will fail. The second is hunger, for when you are staring out into the void of space with nothing left to eat, your own mind starts betraying you and you'll turn on those around you. But fear not, because there is one wonderful solution to both of these immense problems. A full hydroponics basin. It may not look like it, but your Gravship is not just an incredible feat of gravtech engineering celebrated across the galaxy, but it is also rice-powered. Or at least it can be, if you listen up. Get your intellectual hats on and be prepared to look at some tables. Not that kind. We'll start with your difficulty setting, which directly impacts the crop yield of your plants. For all you crazy losing is fun lot, you only get 80% yield for each harvested plant. I'll use this as the example we follow through, but the other difficulties will be shown. Let's look at what can be planted in a hydroponics basin. Rice, potatoes, strawberries, and nutrifungus. What about corn? Apparently, Randy hates corn, and so he banned it from hydroponics basins because he's random like that. We can see the different crop yields, and rice looks to be the lowest yield. However, we need to factor in how many days it takes the crops to grow. I've taken these growth time numbers from the RimWorld wiki, so let's hope they didn't tweak these values into 1.6. Regardless, it will be a little lower than this, given your colonists can botch harvests and there are various planting inefficiencies. With that added, we can do a little bit of maths to determine the yield per day of these crops. We can see that rice gives the highest yield per day, at 2.5 rice per plant per day. These other crops can have their own advantages, like nutrifungus, which doesn't require a sun lamp. However, for pure yield per day, rice is our choice, and we will be rice-powered going forward. We don't only have one rice plant, because there are 4 per hydroponics basin, so let's show that. We then have 24 hydroponics basins, so with all our growing area, we can expect to be growing 242 rice per day. Not bad at all. Aha, I hear you say, these hydroponics and sun lamps are very power intensive. How will you power them in space? The answer, of course, is more rice. Let me introduce you to the biofuel refinery. For the mere cost of 70 rice and a little bit of mushing, we can create 35 chemfuel. Working in perfect synchronization comes the next building, the chemfuel generator. Each one takes that chemfuel and outputs 1000 watts of power. But how much power do we need? By adding up the hydroponic basins, the sun lamp at a massive 2900 watts, the biofuel refinery, and the electric stove we'll use for cooking, we get a total of 5100 watts. So we're going to need at least 6 of the chemfuel generators. Surely that is a lot of rice we're going to need to mush up. And it is, but maybe not as much as you think. Each chemfuel generator needs 30 chemfuel to output 1000 watts of power for 7 days. We have 6, and so we're going to need to put in 180 chemfuel every 7 days. To get 180 chemfuel, we need to run our biofuel refinery 6 times, producing 210 chemfuel by mashing 420 rice. Do we have this much rice? Let's check. This table only has rice per day, so let's times that by 7. We can see our hydroponics basin should be producing 1,696 rice every 7 days. The good news is that that number is bigger than the 420 rice that's being mushed into fuel and burnt into power. From checking the plant stats, we can see that one plant produces 17.68 rice per 7 days. If we divide 420 by that, we get 23.75. What does that mean? So that means that 24 of the 96 slots in your hydroponics are producing all the power you need for the whole system. If you're on an easier difficulty, it'll be even less than that. That then leaves you with 72 slots to grow other things. It is worth stating that you need to be careful that your colonists fill up your chemfuel generators first, because if they put it all into your chemfuel tanks, then your chemfuel production could stop and you'd be in a bit of a mess. Of course, you might need more power for fabrication benches or all the turrets you've strapped to the outside of your ship, and in that case, feel free to build more chemfuel generators and allocate more rice to be turned into chemfuel. However, that other creeping worry is coming back in. Food. Well, rice is food. That's convenient. Safe to say, you'll definitely be planting more rice. But how much? Of course, that depends on how many people you have. What are their xenotypes? Do any of them have the really annoying gourmand trait? get ready for another table. Now, I'll keep this a bit shorter by just talking through the baseliner row. Here are all the xenotypes. One column shows their nutrient requirements per day, which does vary quite a bit between the different xenotypes. We could feed them raw rice, and for pigskins, that might be the best bet. But for everyone else, we've got a few options on this rice-powered ship of ours. Nutrient paste, simple meals, or if you're fancy, vegetarian fine meals made from 15 rice. I know lavish exists, but that's too good for us. These 3 meal options provide 0.9 nutrition each, which can fill the hunger bar by 90%. The baseliner requires 1.6 nutrition a day, so if we divide that by 0.9, we can see they need 1.78 meals per day. To make these meals, how much rice would that need? Nutrient paste only needs 6 rice. I had to triple check that number because I can't believe it's so low. Simple meals need 10 rice and fine meals need 15 rice. Our chem fuel number of 24 plants is done per 7 days. So I'm going to do the same thing here and times all of these by 7. For nutrient paste, a baseliner needs 74.7 rice to feed them for 7 days. So if you're worried about your rice supply or your population is booming, get everyone onto nutrient paste and eat that -4 mood debuff. Simple meals need 124.4 rice and fine meals need 186.7 rice. My I don't want to starve to death space worry is still a bit worried, and I'm trying to figure out why. Whenever I watch my pawns, I feel like they're going to go get a meal all the time. These sneaky pawns, it turns out, will wait until their hunger bar gets to 30% full, and then they'll go and get a meal. If all your pawns eat at 30% hunger, or when they've got 0.3 nutrition left, then to fill them up, they only get 0.7 nutrition from the 0.9 nutrition meal that they've just eaten. In some ways, this is a good thing because you start to get a hungry debuff at 25% of their hunger bar. But in this situation, it could spell disaster for our calculations. So, just in case, I'm going to take a slightly safer look, but with a 0.7 nutrition value for each meal instead. Our baseliner now needs 96 rice for nutrient paste, 160 for simple meals, and 240 for fine meals to feed them for 7 days. Our final table doesn't include all of the difficulties, but it does have losing is fun at 80% and kind of a normal difficulty at 100% yield. It allows us to see how many plants this baseliner will require from our hydroponic setup to feed them. If feeding with nutrient paste, each baseliner needs 5.43 plants. Simple meals is just over 9 plants, and fine meals is 13.6 plants. Just in case you have any gourmand pawns, I'll just expand the table to give all of the information for them as well. You can now work out this value for each of your pawns and compare it to the 96 plants total. For example, for our 3 baseliners here in this ship, none of them are gourmand. And so we've got 24 of the 96 slots in our hydroponics dedicated to producing all the power, and we've then got them eating simple meals, so that's just over 9 plants each, so 28 plants to feed all of them with simple meals forever. So that's 51 plants that are dedicated to the power worry and the food worry. And that leaves us with 45 plants to do whatever we want. If you've got Neanderthals, you're probably going to have more spare rice. If you've got a bunch of Itakin, then you're going to be having to feed them a lot more and you're going to have less rice. It might be that eventually your population requires 2 sets of hydroponic space. If we've got excess rice, then I'd really recommend just producing more chem fuel. If you're moving your Gravship, going to need to be putting chem fuel into your chem fuel tanks anyway, and so it's a great use of the excess. However, you can also grow things like cotton or heel roots, or eventually if you want devil strand for better clothing and all the other uses there. Anyway, I know I've gone very in depth with this, so I hope it's been useful and let me know what you think. Thanks for watching.